Okay, it says we're live, and I will do my best not to screw this up today. For those of you that watched my attempts yesterday to figure out what the hell I was doing wrong, I think we got it all fixed. So, beep, yeah. Anyway, uh, please help keep the air conditioning on because it's only in the 90s today, but it'll go back up pretty soon. And as always, whoops, camera, King Harv's Coffee. We love his coffee. They do an excellent job, and we drink a lot of it. Blanket Fort Blend is excellent. They do have a couple others. If you're wondering why the chair next to me is empty, Ian had an appointment this morning, and we all know how appointments go. They run late. He's running at least an hour late. And yes, I purposely wore a shirt so I would not match.
I don't think you ever match. I like this one.
Yeah.
Courtney's on her way, but apparently there's some sort of traffic. So
Traffic, yes, we deal with that.
Yeah.
Nancy, you get what you deserve. We're spreading it around because we want everybody else to feel the same pain we feel down here. Yeah. Yes, I'm wearing shirts for a reason. Today is Book Tuesday as usual. Oh, I forgot.
He needs to sit on something.
Put him on the box.
He's kind of there. I got another box. So it is Book Tuesday.
Yeah, it is Book Tuesday. Somebody will be here shortly to.
Oh, just push that to the end. So
Okay.
we can talk about books at the end. So.
Yeah.
But you've got a lovely woman waiting.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, you should never, ever keep a lovely woman waiting.
I'm not keeping her waiting long. We do have one announcement. A friend of ours, Peter Nealon, has a new book out called Frontiers of Chaos in the Peleus Group Solutions. And Peter writes excellent books. They are very realistic, probably more realistic than a lot of people would like to believe. However, he knows of which he speaks. Whoops. Why is this freaking? All right, there. Sit, stay. So anyway, without further ado, since I'm here by myself and I need help, shut up. Shut up back there. Damn peanut gallery. The first ever electronic guest that we're going to have is Monalisa Foster, and I'd like to welcome her to the show. Hey, Monalisa.
Hello, everyone.
And Monalisa has a few things she would like to talk about, so feel free.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to talk about this novelette that I sold to Analog, and that's out now. And here's the cover for it. There we go. It's hard science fiction, and I was just absolutely floored that they bought it because it took them about a year to the day to get back to me. So I had thought, there's no way. There's no way that they're buying it. And I was walking back from one of the panels at Fantasy, a year to the date from when the idea for the story was conceived. And it was the same Friday of the con. We were in the same room as we had been last year for the speakers panel on where we created a creature, which is how the story started. And I'm walking down the hall, and Melissa Olthoff and I are going up to my room to get pizza because we're hungry. And I open up my email, and there's this email from somebody whose name is kind of sort of familiar, maybe. And I'm thinking, oh, something wrong, because it starts with apologies. And I have to give my phone to Melissa and say, can you just read this for me? Because I don't think it says what I think it says. So yeah, it said exactly what I didn't think it said, which is we would like to buy this story. It's 12,000 words, and we're going to buy it sans edits. And then both Melissa and I just turned into a couple of little girls, and we started squealing, and we scared everybody in the lobby and the hallway, because there's nothing scarier than two middle-aged women squealing like little girls. Because yeah, they wanted this story. So it's finally out, and I would love for people to take a look at it.
Thank you.
And let me know
It
what
is
you
an
think.
outstanding story.
Well, you read it.
Yeah, it is outstanding.
What'd you like about it, Jim?
Start that, I'm going to give away too many things.
Yeah, that's kind of my worry too. Is that that if we talk about it too much, we're gonna give away the ending. But I don't know. Maybe
There
we
is
should.
math required, I will tell you that.
Huh?
There is math required, I will tell you that.
Okay, now, don't scare people off from my story.
Oh,
I based the main character for this actually on my oldest daughter, who is an actual bona fide mathematician. She got her degree in mathematics with an emphasis in statistics a couple of years ago. And I kind of used her as, I guess, my inspiration, not so much as a template for the main character in this story, who just happens to be a young woman who is the lowest ranking mathematician on the starship that is going from one place to another. And she detects something that she thinks could be a quantum encrypted signal coming from this planet that is not on their schedule, it's not on their route. And she has talked her supervisor into letting her check it out, which involves getting in a shuttle, and she's terrified of flying. She's fine on the big ships, but she's not too keen on the little shuttles. And she has to go to this planet. Now, she's not an explorer. She's a math person. She's kind of on the spaceship because her parents got her there, so she's insecure and a little bit cautious. And they fly down there and start to look around the area where they sort of detected this signal. And that's kind of where the story starts. And we get to meet this creature that kind of came out of that panel. Chuck Gannon and Julie Frost and I were on the science team, and Melissa Olthoff and Rich Wayand and I knew Jenny Posthumous, I think, was on the fantasy team. So the whole purpose of that initial panel was for these two teams to come up with a creature, and then they would fight. And speaker would determine, and speaker is Robert Hampson, would determine which creature won the fight depending on the features that we had put into it. And one of the features that I really, really wanted to put into it that we didn't end up in putting into it, is kind of the reason this story works. And it was something that I ran into thanks to Ian, who is not here.
but you can blame him anyway.
I am going to blame him anyway, because I had never heard of the uncanny valley effect before that. And I remember one of the things that he had brought up was this idea that we had evolved this creepy feeling about something that looked human, but wasn't, for evolutionary reasons. So if you think about it, that's actually pretty scary.
Yep, it is. And you also have a book coming out here shortly.
I do. Okay, so I have to show you this awesome cover. And I have a note. So this is the book that's coming out, and it has nothing to do with the aforementioned story, but it's out today in the bundle. So if you do the Bane bundles, and you're the kind of person that is okay with reading half of a book, I don't know who you are. I'm assuming they exist because they do these bundles all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's out today. And you can read the first half of it today, and then you have to wait until December, unfortunately, to get the end of it. But it's kind of out in the wild, and I'm very excited about it.
And you want to give us a little background on that one?
The initial inspiration for this came from the John Wayne Western, El Dorado. That is the story where John Wayne comes into town, runs up against his old war buddy. We don't really get a very good sense of which war, or if they were on the same side. And he gets sent back out of town. He gets sent on his way. Basically, we don't need your help. And then he leaves. And he comes back some months later because he finds out that his friend, who he had gotten to, who had said, "Okay, I won't go up against you," is a drunk, and things have turned. So he's going back basically to help his friend. And that was the initial inspiration for this. I liked that idea of somebody going back to help their friend, helping them out of a bad situation. And I thought this would make an excellent space opera. And Tony agreed. And then at some point, I don't know, after a few months of looking into how do I turn this into science fiction? How do I make this about something science related? I pitched an idea, and she told me, yeah, go ahead and make it about space cows. Because that was the one thing that I was kind of hesitant about, was making it about space cows, because I figured it was kind of silly. But it turned out to work very well for the story. So I went ahead and I started writing, and I did it in about 4 months. It's about 115,000 words. And it felt together fairly easily. I really enjoyed writing it. We have a completely, not a completely different setting from a Western, but if you're thinking more, or I'm thinking more like a Firefly kind of setting, where you've got a mixture of places where there's advanced technology like we would have today, mixed in with some places where it's very wild and looks more like an old West town, or something out of the Meiji Restoration, which was one of the aesthetics that I really put in there, because I wanted to have this mix of cowboy and samurai in the setting. So on this planet, which is called Gorodon, you have one big city with a spaceport that's called Sakura, and it's about the same level of technology that we have now. But the further you get out from Sakura, the more primitive it is. It's kind of like going back in time. So once you get out to the frontier, there's villages, and they don't necessarily have electricity, or if they do, it's very limited. So now you've got more of an Old West Meiji Restoration kind of feel to the setting. And that's where most of the story takes place.
David wants to know if you have an analog for the James Caan character in it.
I do. I've got this goofy little guy who doesn't know how to shoot, doesn't see very well. He doesn't know how to swim. He can barely ride a horse. And his specialty, you guys are going to love this, is mushrooms. He's an exomycologist, which would be somebody who studies alien mushrooms, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I got to learn a lot about mushrooms for this book.
That brings up another interesting question. And that is the amount of research. Doug says sounds more like a Bob Hope Western. Not so much. The amount of research, I know you do a lot of research for your books.
Well, I read, in addition to the mushroom book, I've been reading stuff on genetic engineering for ages. Almost everything I write has something to do with genetic engineering.
Yep.
The Ravages of Honor series is very much genetic engineering based. I don't get into too much of the science because if I actually had a way of doing this stuff, I'd be filing for patents, not for copyrights.
Yep.
But I did, so I researched mushrooms. I researched a lot of stuff about living in the Old West and how people lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s on Earth. Because usually this is not the kind of setting that I write in. So I don't usually write Westerns. And I also did a lot of research with where are we going to be in the next 200 or 300 years as a society, because they are leaving Earth to go colonize this place. So why would they be leaving Earth, and how would they be going there, and why, and what are they escaping from? So for stuff like that, I read things like Stakeholder Capitalism and The End of the World as We Know It, or The End of the World is Just the Beginning, which is a book on geopolitics. So now I'm doing research on all sorts of political stuff that just makes me want to tear your hair out because, oh my God, bad times are coming. But from the perspective of a writer, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So I have
so many options.
There's just so many options. You know, we've got the fall and balkanization of the United States and Brazil and India and China. And now we've got all of these little fiefdoms that are run by corporate nobility. And this is, I mean, so you kind of have to have an idea of why is it that they left, even if you don't actually get into it in the book, which I didn't get into it that much. But yeah, so basically you've got people leaving Earth and going out and colonizing some of these places. And this planet just happens to be very much like Japan. Geography is the same. It looks a lot like Earth. It's mostly terraformed, but there is some terraforming that needs to be done, which is part of the main plot for this. So, you know, you can have a lot of people that are going there specifically with the charter of preserving the Japanese culture, which no longer exists on Earth.
Right. Because
Japan doesn't exist.
See, I did some of that in my middle sci-fi too. And, you know, that's one of the things, and the amount of research that you did in the ROH series just blows my mind. I look at you, I look at Alma, I look at some of the other folks, and the amount of research probably equals, if not exceeds, the amount of time taken to write the books. And a lot of people don't understand that as readers.
They don't. And I think that if they were to understand it, then maybe you haven't written a story.
Yeah.
Okay. I think maybe, I don't know about you, but I put maybe 5%, maybe 5% into the actual narrative of something. Even the hard SF stuff, like the story and analog, yes, there's a little bit of math, but it's okay. It's not that bad. Because otherwise you stop telling a story and you started writing a journal or a tutorial or something. How much do you estimate you put in yours?
I would say probably less than 5%. I know in one case, because I've been shooting so long, I know guns, which means I know exactly how much I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I literally did about 6 hours of research for what turned out to be 2 sentences in the book. But
yeah.
And right now I'm researching for an oil field story for the haunted library, or for the library anthology we're doing. We're doing another benefit for them. That closes the end of the month, by the way. But I have probably already got 20 or 25 hours of research into that. And my family spent much of their lives in the oil business. So I know enough to know that, once again, I've got to go do the research to be able to write a coherent story. And much like you, I have a reputation for accuracy. damn it. So now everybody expects what I put in the books to be accurate, even if it's fiction. So, yeah, we're kind of hoisting our own petards there.
I think this is why it's good to put something in there, like maybe an afterword about what it is that is real in your
Yep.
story and what is not. Because I think way too many people come out thinking, oh, this can actually happen. And it tends to backfire on you pretty quickly if you're writing anything that's near future.
Yeah.
I would say I didn't track the hours, but I ended up having to do research on what it was like to have a prosthetic limb because my main character is a cyborg.
Yeah.
She has a prosthetic forearm. If you look at the cover, I don't know if you notice, but
yeah.
she's not wearing a glove.
Silver hand.
She's got a silver hand because she has a prosthetic forearm and hand. So that was the kind of research where, you can't really go and experience it because it's permanent.
Yeah.
So I got to talk to some people who were amputees and kind of, garnered their experience about what it was like to adapt to a prosthesis or what it felt like to have a missing limb. And it's part of her identity and it influences everything that she does. I mean, obviously it's her hand. So I learned a whole bunch of things I never would have expected to know.
Yep. Well, and just like Rob talks about what the research he did for his new book that's out.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he cheated since he was already doing that for a living.
Well, there's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
But that is the kind of stuff that you have to do the deep research on to make it believable. And that's one of the hardest parts in fiction because a lot of the stuff is, it's hand wavy.
Mm-hmm.
Just accept it and go on. Except that we tend to not write that kind of stuff. I mean, even your story in Ross 248, there was a lot of research that went into that.
Yeah, that world came with its own Bible.
Yeah,
and
it required more research,
which required more research and compliance with the Bible.
Yeah.
So the main bugaboo for the story, as far as the cybernetic implant went, was the power source for it, and that is that's one of those things where I reached out to Rob and said, okay, so how do I make this work? And the reason we have the Hampson effect in threading the needle is because if Rob can get away with hand waving his cybernetics, then I can get away with hand waving my cybernetic power source too. So it is powered literally by the Hampson effect. So anybody who pings me for what does the cybernetic arm run on, it runs on the Hampson effect, and you can ask Rob all about it.
Oh, that is perfect. That is so perfect. Well done. The other thing that we try to do is, as some of the other folks in the chat have alluded to, is to make sure that if we're doing an alternate history, we basically have enough of the history correct enough to make it, again, believable. I know Peter does that. D.A. Brock, who's on here, does that. David Bach. We all do the same thing. And it's funny because, and Peter Nigland, another example. Peter is a combat Marine. He was Marine Recon and a sniper. And after he got out of the Marines, he went back downrange as a contractor. So he's seen it up close and personal. And he also has people that he reaches out to bounce things off of for his stories. Just like a sequence in the Gray Man series with the Marine in combat where he loses his part of his leg is based on conversations that I had with a Marine that I worked with who lost his leg in combat in Afghanistan. And when you do that, it adds to the story. And it also gives people a sense, I think, of the reality of what it is like when you do have those problems. And the whole issue in that book with him having issues at Walter Reed and later at Sam Houston were based on fact. When they did his emergency surgery at Landstuhl, they actually missed a nerve, and it ended up basically ending at the stump. So he had problems for over a year with his prosthetic because every time he put weight on it, it was directly impinging on the end of that nerve. And it took him over a year to find out what the problem was.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
really?
Everybody gets really excited about things like prosthetics. Okay.
Yeah.
And, for good reason. But I don't think anything is ever as good as the original equipment. So as we get older, our bodies break down. We wish we could replace the breaking down body parts, right? Okay.
Tell me about it.
I would love for somebody to come fix my neck.
Your neck, my back.
Yeah, it's problematic. But the truth is, they aren't making stuff that's better, and probably won't be for a long time. Until they can start growing body parts for you based on your own, cloned DNA. There's not going to be anything that is going to be just as good as your original parts. I mean, we keep dreaming about it, but it's a very sophisticated, very complicated problem because our bodies are very complicated.
I do remember one instance before Wounded Warrior went all woke and crap. We were doing Wounded Warrior shoots down at Quantico. And we brought a bunch of people down there, and we brought out guns. So giving these kids a chance to get back on a gun, which is what most of them wanted to do. And one kid was a former Marine sniper, had lost his right arm in an IED, and was down there with a prosthetic. And he wanted to get back on a long range gun. So we put him back down on a sniper rifle. And he dinged the plate at 1,000 yards 5 times out of 5 shots. And I'll never forget, he looked up and he said, "Damn, this finger's better than my original one." He said, "I'm more accurate." What do you say to that? Is it he was just so happy to get back on a gun? Or was it the fact that he had enough control now to be able to do that? I don't have an answer to that question. But that's still, that still hits me right here. Just the sheer joy to be able to shoot again.
Yeah. I mean, I like shooting too, but I'm not a sniper. I have never been trained as a sniper. So I had to do all the research that went, excuse me, that went with that. And someone was just difficult. For example, I'm cross dominant. So for me, but my character isn't. So it was one of those things where I'm pinging people going, trying to verify that this is how she would actually hold the gun if you were not cross dominant, because I know how to hold it because I am cross dominant.
Yeah.
But just little things that all of us that you thought you knew all of your life, and all of a sudden you're just second guessing yourself, because if you're going to put them on paper and it's going to be published, it has to be right.
I remember us talking about the hand position
Yeah.
and get the
Especially
thumb
with,
off the top of the gun.
yeah. Especially with this crowd.
Yeah.
It's like, don't you dare get any of it wrong.
Oh no, God no.
Because you will never, ever, ever live it down.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as getting a horse wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, gunners and horse people, I swear. And
On
before
medical
Johnny
people
yells
too.
at me, clothing people
And medical people.
and medical people, yes.
I mean, like I sort of kind of gave up at one point. I just went, this is just going to happen, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to worry about it too much. But yeah, the guy, I don't want to piss off the gun people.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, because there are a lot of your readers.
Yes.
And Johnny chimes in capitals. Get the clothes right.
Well, luckily,
Yes.
I could make up my own clothes for this. So,
Yeah.
Oh,
Johnny says, I have a drinking game about clothes being wrong in movies.
we should play that someday. It doesn't take much to get me drunk, so you'll win.
Yeah, we're well aware of that. You and your white Russians.
Me and my white Russians. Then the other.
You and Rita chuckling over in the corner worried all of us.
Well, we're scary when we chuckle or giggle.
Yes.
Yes. And then some of the other research involved, well, I don't know if you'd call it research. I remember some of the people that I grew up with when I was little. It was my great uncle, so it was my grandfather generation. They had fought in World War II.
Yeah.
And when I was little, it was my great uncle and great aunt who took care of me. So when I was little, I was living around all of these really old people because they were the ones raising me. And this was back in Romania. Like when we were huddling down in the cellar, not a basement, in the cellar, listening to Radio Free Europe and listening to these old guys tell some of the stories from World War II. So it's amazing. It was amazing to me how much of that kind of was like refreshed in my mind once I started thinking about it, because there were stories about what it was like to be in war, and not necessarily sniper related stuff, but stuff that could be adapted, and that I adapted to this as flashbacks for Talia, having been a sniper, and more importantly, having been a female sniper.
Yeah. Well, your story, The Night Witches. That's another one that got people's attention.
Yeah. And it was the same. It's along the same vein in that it filters it through the experience of a woman, and it's going to be different than what I think a guy experiences. And I hope it makes sense to people.
It does. And, you talk about that. The analogy I use for the difference between men and women is a railroad.
Mm-hmm.
For guys, it's a straight track. For women, it's a switching yard, with 42 tracks all going simultaneously.
Right.
No wonder we don't understand y'all.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, the other analogy about women be like the cockpit in 740s. It's just so complicated. You have to know the right sequence and everything. Yeah, okay, I'll take it.
And guys are a J3, J3 Cup.
I'm okay with this. I'm complicated.
Yes.
So my characters are too, I guess.
They're multi-level. One thing your characters are not are cardboard cutouts.
God, I hope not. I'm so tired of cardboard. It's so dry, and I'm just so done with it. And that's one of the reasons I decided to get into this whole writing thing.
Yeah.
Is I wanted to write certain types of characters.
Yep.
Oh, and yes, whoever asked in the chat, yes, Romania, and I do not have an accent. Thank you. Thank you. I came here when I was fairly young, so that's why. But thank
She's
you for
working very
mentioning
hard
it.
to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point, David. People are complicated. Realistic fictional characters need to be as well. The problem is, this is personal opinion. A lot of writers, the only characterization that's really complicated is the protagonist and the antagonist, and the rest, not so much. I tend to write deeper characters and backstories because to me that makes the entire sequence better and more relatable. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, the challenge in this one for me is I have never written a single viewpoint novel before.
Yeah.
And this entire book is written from the protagonist's viewpoint. And that was something new for me. Usually I write, because I like far sweeping epic science fiction, you have to have multiple viewpoints. And I tend to default to dual protagonists because apparently the romance writer in me just will not let it go. Everything has to be dual protagonists. Should be. So
Damn, y'all are
making
trying
this,
to kill me.
making this single protagonist was a completely new experience.
Yeah.
But I did it, and it made it both more difficult and easier at the same time, just in different ways. And fleshing out the other characters, the ones that were not viewpoint characters, was one of the challenges in this book because I wanted to give them all 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys will like them because they're their own individual people on multiple levels.
Yeah. Yeah, now a couple of people are saying, yeah, you do have a little bit of an accent, but they've also been to Romania, so they.
No, I'm told I have by foreign people. A lot of people think I'm British for some reason.
I don't have a clue on that one.
Yeah, I don't either.
AJ, one of the things that's different today is I'm doing it on StreamYard. So it probably didn't alert, and that's my fault. But I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing with this. As I said, Monalisa is the first ever electronic guest we've had. Everybody else that we've had has actually been here, sitting here. But I wasn't about her to ask her to drive 2 hours up here to sit for an hour and then drive 2 hours home.
But it seems to be working just fine. I mean,
yeah. Well, once I figured out what I screwed up yesterday, it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you guys didn't make me drive for 4 hours. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, Tom.
The one behind me is my husband's desk, actually. We share an office.
Yeah, Tom's another one that.
See, nobody promised me lunch, John. Nobody mentioned lunch.
I said I would buy you lunch.
They said you don't want to drive up here for 2 hours, spend an hour, and go turn around. And I'm like, you're right.
It makes her a plank owner for the guest chair. Yes. Native English speaker raised abroad. Okay, Padre. I'm not going to ask what the background of that one is. But one of the things that you've got to look at too is our life experiences are all different. Everybody is different. I have classmates that have never been further than 100 miles from Texarkana, Arkansas. You grew up in Romania. You came to the States as a child. You've had multiple experiences. I did 20 plus years in the military. We've got folks on here that are former military in various services. Some are still active duty. We've got other folks that have been in the IT world for years. We've got folks that are former engineers, currently engineers. We've got housemakers that are former military. So everybody has a different perspective. And to me, that's what makes our group so interesting, is we have such a wide range of people. And these are all people we can reach out to. If we have a question, we can reach out and say, hey, what about? And I know we all do that. Some of us unintentionally and some intentionally.
Well, I mean, that's what's so nice about having a writing group that isn't necessarily a workshopping group, because you can workshop your work in progress to death.
Yeah.
And it will kill that story. You have to know when to stop doing that. But when you sit around and just have a free-flowing conversation with other people, that's when you start getting ideas. And somebody says something, and that kind of, it's like a domino effect, right? Yeah. And we have these little sessions, and then we kind of feed on each other.
Yeah, this is true.
And it could go sideways in places you don't want to go. But a lot of
That's tactical romance.
Yeah.
You were involved in a couple of those discussions.
Yeah, I think so. It's the ones where Ian's always blushing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I find them extremely useful, because not only do you get ideas, but you see other people's processes and how it all works for them. I mean, process is one of those things that I tend probably to over talk about, but it's really one of the most interesting things for me. When, I don't know if you guys remember, but it used to be that once a movie went out of the theater and it came out on disc, you would buy it, and there would be another disc in there on how this movie was made. So you get like a documentary that was just as long as the movie, going over the special effects. That's why I bought those.
Yeah.
I had already seen the movie. I wanted to see what the guts underneath looked like. I wanted to see the man behind the curtain and how he is doing what he is doing. So for me, it's always interesting to see what somebody else's process is. It's sometimes more interesting than anything else.
Oh yeah. In John's comment, I watched an entire series get born at a bar at conventions. Yeah.
Talent juice. There's a reason we call it talent juice.
Yeah. And there are so many different things that come out of cons, and like our suppers. Everybody says how lucky we are, and I firmly agree with that. We are lucky because we get a chance to sit down and, as you said, talk amongst ourselves and bounce ideas off each other. And nobody gets laughed at too much.
Yeah, I love that qualifier, too much.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff is just genuinely funny. You can't help but laugh.
Yeah. Hush, Jonna. Jonna's cracking up in the background over here.
The little squealing that she does.
Yeah. David says, unlike many people, I do want to see how the sausage is made. Yeah, it can be an ugly thing. Oh, differ. Your kids are at that age. Aunt and aunt. Yeah. Yeah, and if you pronounce them aunt and aunt, then yeah, who knows? Of course, as one wag said years ago, English isn't a language so much as it is a good mugger. It takes the other languages into the alley, steals what it wants, beats the hell out of them, and then leaves. And that's something else too. The people that are bilingual or multilingual have an entirely different approach to English than we do.
I think that if you're going to be a writer, you should take at least another language
Yeah.
because it teaches you so much about English.
Mhm.
And not only will it probably make you a better writer in English, it opens up a whole new world of things you could put in your book.
Yeah.
Like when things are misinterpreted or misunderstood, or you can cause difficulties in your story simply with language and how it's used. Like the way that sometimes I have to go, can you explain that to me? Because I don't understand some colloquialism that you guys take for granted. And yeah, I've been here like 40 plus years and I still have to have things explained to me.
Yeah.
Because I have no point of reference for this, especially the regional stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, translation, please. I don't know what that means.
I still remember Miguel Gonzalez read my first book, and I got an email from him that said, "Your Spanish sucks. Send me your goddamn book, and I'll fix your Spanish." So, for the next 5 books in the series, I would ship it to him and go, "Okay, fix the Spanish," and he'd fix it and send it back because my Spanish is that bad.
Yeah. No, I don't know that I've made up languages. I don't think I've used, well, I don't think I've used anything. I've made them up. I like making them up.
J.R.R. Tolkien version
Oh,
2.0.
no. No.
But the thing is, if you create it and it works, that's what counts.
Mm-hmm.
And the continuity, which is something that I have problems with through a book or through a series, is to be able to keep that continuity running from book to book.
I'm running into that with the Ravagers of Honor series. I have to sit down here at some point and finish up. So I had the third book out to alpha readers, and they came back with some stuff, and I decided to do some edits. My goal is to have them done by the end of the month and throw it back to them. And while they're going over it again, sit down and outline the first 2 books and make sure I didn't somehow contradict myself in the third book, because I don't have a world Bible. Yeah. I don't have an outline because I'm pantser.
Yeah.
And I'm just crossing my fingers and my toes, hoping that I don't contradict myself in any way. And I should probably do that for Threading the Needle too, because at some point there'll probably be a sequel to it.
Yeah.
But it is so easy to get lost in the minutia, and the more world building you do, the worse it is.
Yeah.
I can now kind of appreciate why some people don't do very intense world building, because it is just so easy to write yourself into a corner or contradict yourself, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to be paying more attention than you are. So it's kind of scary on some levels.
Yeah. Like my reader that went online to use Google Earth to see if there was actually a dumpster behind the bank in Fort Stockton, Texas, and then sent me a picture of it.
Now, see, that's the kind of rivet counter that I would just go, okay, dude. But okay.
Well, there again, I was establishing a reputation for being accurate in my stuff, so he decided to see how accurate I was.
Yeah. I think that's another reason I like to write science fiction, to be honest with you, and more of the fantastical kind of stuff than the real world stuff, because I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. I want to have the creativity of being able to say, okay, this is like Earth, but it's not Earth.
Yeah, John makes a good point. Do a Bible and a character place list. Yeah, and I've started doing that after I finished the Gray Man series.
How long did it take you?
I started it with the first book in the series, and I haven't kept it up as well as I should, but I've probably got 70%, maybe 75% in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's just, it's a lot of work.
But that's, the price you pay.
Yes, the price you pay for success. It's awful, isn't it?
Well, if you call it success.
I mean, you're still
I mean,
writing
I'm
it.
selling books, so yeah,
Yeah.
plus my characters are never perfect. Yours aren't either, which is one of the things that draws me to your stuff. Uh,
Yeah, I intend to do the outlining as I'm writing, or at least once I'm finished
yeah,
writing. The problem is by the time I get to the end of the book and I'm done with it, I am so done with it.
yeah,
I am so done with it. I have to walk away from the thing, or I'm going to set it on fire.
yeah,
And once you're in that mood of I am so done with this,
yeah.
yeah, it'll be
There's no
months.
going back at that point. Yeah,
And then you're off to another project and
yeah.
you're writing the next book. Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Yes, it is. The other thing that I like about your writing, and some of the other folks on here, David and Da, is you actually bring in the sense of smell.
Mhm.
I found that many of the authors today never mention any other visual cues, smell cues, anything else. I don't understand why.
When I was taking the depth workshop,
So let's just stick with that. Yeah. Courtney.
Go ahead.
I was taking the depth workshop was one of the very first workshops that I took from Dean Wesley Smith and Chris Rush. And depth has to do with these things that you were talking about, is experiencing the world through the character's senses and all five senses, and keeping that going throughout a book. So a lot of people start out with the depth at the beginning, and then it just gradually tapers off and they stop experiencing the story through the character. They're in a hurry. I don't know. They get too wound up in the plot. I'm not sure how it happens. But that was like when I first took that class, it hit me like a ton of bricks as to why the stuff that I liked, why I liked it.
Yeah.
And it all had to do with that sense of being in the story. And
Yeah.
You do it through the senses and through the emotions that those senses bring to it. And I just finished reading a thriller, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but it was well done in terms of this is what a thriller should be. But there was no experience of being in the story as the character because there was no emotion to it at all, and no sensing through the characters. And it's not somebody I would look at or pick up again because it just felt so remote.
Yeah.
And getting the emotions in there, without, he said sadly, he felt bad. He was angry, without naming them, getting those emotions into the reader so that the reader feels them, I think is probably one of the hardest things to master as a writer.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, eventually, you either figure it out or you don't. But those are the books that usually make the, okay, I'm going to finish it, and yes, I'm going to reread it pile for me.
Tom makes a good point. Tom and Dave both, because they never smelled anything but air conditioning, so they've never smelled the real world.
Yeah.
And the real world is a smelly place. It's Go to the third world where you don't have air conditioning.
Or deodorant.
Yeah.
Or soap.
Bathe regularly.
Or they don't bathe regularly. Yeah.
Yes.
Or toothpaste.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first encounter with the Bedouins over in Iran back in the day. They looked pretty in their white Bedou outfits. But oh boy, you do not want to be downwind of them. Because it gets ugly. Or France, yes. France in the fall. It's no wonder they all leave in August.
When my great aunt came to visit us, and this was in the 80s or so, I was in high school. I remember her coming to visit us. It was the only relative that came over here to visit us. And we went to pick her up at the airport. And yeah, she had been traveling. It took her
Yeah.
a day or two, to come over on a plane. But the smell,
Yeah.
oh my God, it just, I had become so Americanized, and having lived in, at the time we were living in Arizona, with people who bathe regularly, brush their teeth regularly, wash their hair regularly, wear deodorant all the time, and then have this person come into our home. I mean, we drove home with the windows down.
Yeah.
And, it's she was embarrassed, obviously, because, she should figure it out. But it just hit me just how different, and it's so easy to become acclimated to what's normal here. Yeah.
One thing I remember about the Brits especially is the smell of wet wool. Because the Brits wear wool suits year round because they very seldom get any high temperatures.
All right.
And it rains a lot over there. And I can remember going into meetings, and the smell that always ties to that is the smell of wet wool and pipe smoke.
Yeah.
Because these guys were boffins, down to the Harris tweed and the patches on the elbows. Anyway.
Well, it makes me wonder what the world smelled like when everybody was smoking.
It didn't notice it.
Well, that's just it. But did you smell anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes smoking was the cleanest air you were going to get. Yeah. Third world, yeah. Italy back in the day, the Philippines back in the day. Yeah. Going out and smoking a cigarette was the cleanest air you were going to get.
Wow.
I mean, we didn't call Shit River and PI Shit River for nothing, because that's literally what it was. And if you were in Vietnam, it was the same thing. It was the stench of rotting food, rotting jungle, burning shit with a jet fuel, and the stench of the people. And you become inured to it, and you don't even notice it. If feedlots are parking next to a hog hauler, yeah, or being downwind of a pork processing plant, yes. As somebody said, yeah, that's the smell of money. Yes, it is. But damn. I mean, here in Texas, the smell of money is a feedlot or oil wells. So anyway, thank you very much for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me.
I do appreciate it, as always. You're great people, and we love your writing. And we need to get y'all back up here once or twice.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. And thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be your first remote guest, my first digital guest.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've done 3,000 feet AGL in North Texas this summer. Yep. Anyway, folks, thanks for putting up with us. And Monalisa, I really appreciate it. Love you, dear. Anyway, she is a fantastic guest. She's fantastic people. A bunch of us that will be down in San Antonio this weekend. She and her husband are coming down to support Rob Hampson's book signing, which will be on Saturday at Barnes & Noble in San Antonio. And we're having a little Nauticon afterwards. And we're going to call it a day, folks, since I have not been joined by anybody. And we will say hi to speaker for you. So remember, folks, don't sweat the petty stuff. Don't pet the sweaty stuff. And again, thanks to Monalisa, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.